My CEO fired me for being too old to understand the digital future, unaware that I own the patent for the product that generates 90% of his revenue. He realized his mistake 3 hours later when the production line ground to a halt, but by then, the price of my return had just doubled. I am Arthur. I am 62 years old. I wear a tie to work every day. I write my notes in a leather-bound journal with a fountain pen that belonged to my father, and I prefer a phone call to a Slack message because I believe tone matters. In the modern tech landscape, this makes me a dinosaur, a relic, a fossil to be excavated and displayed as a warning of how things used to be done before the cloud ate the world. But what the new management at Aerodyne Solutions failed to understand is that fossils are made of rock, and rock is very, very hard to break. I founded the engineering division of Aerodyne 30 years ago. Back then, it was just me and the founder, a brilliant man named Silas who passed away 4 years ago. We worked out of a rented warehouse that smelled of ozone and stale coffee. Together, we developed the K4 valve. It is a specialized, high-pressure fuel injection component used in aerospace. It isn't sexy. It doesn't have an app. It doesn't use AI. But it is the industry standard for stabilizing fuel flow at Mach 2. It is boring. It is technical. And it is the only reason this company exists. It generates $40 million a year in revenue, keeping the lights on and the investors happy. When Silas died, the soul of the company went with him. The board, looking to modernize, brought in Julian. Julian is 29. He is a disruptor. He wears hoodies to board meetings, drinks oat milk lattes that cost $8, and uses words like synergy, blockchain, and paradigm shift in every sentence, usually incorrectly. He looked at the company and saw a cash cow that needed to be milked, and he looked at the staff and saw legacy costs. I was the biggest legacy cost. My salary is high because I know the system better than anyone alive. I know the physics of the valve better than the computer models do. The disrespect started on day one. Julian moved my office from the corner suite, the one Silas and I toasted in when we got our first Boeing contract, to a smaller room near the break room because we need the space for the meditation pod. He stopped inviting me to strategy meetings. He hired a team of digital natives, kids fresh out of college who could code in Python but couldn't tell you the difference between torque and tension. They looked at me like I was furniture. This morning, Monday, January 5th, was the breaking point. Julian called an all-hands meeting in the main atrium at 9 a.m. The entire company was there, standing around the sleek new espresso bar Julian had installed. He stood on a stage, packing back and forth wearing limited edition sneakers that cost more than my first car, holding a microphone like a rock star. "We are moving to a cloud-first, AI-driven model," Julian buzzed, his voice amplified by the speakers. "We need agility. We need youth. We need people who live in the code, not in the past. We are pivoting. The old Aerodyne is dead. The new Aerodyne is about velocity." He looked directly at me. I was standing in the back, holding my coffee, leaning against a pillar. "Arthur," he called out. The room went silent. 200 heads turned. The interns, the engineers, the sales team, they all looked at me. "Yes, Julian," I asked, keeping my voice steady. "I noticed you printed out the Q4 reports yesterday," he said, shaking his head with a pitying smile, performing for his audience. "You printed them, on paper, in 2026. A few of the interns snickered. They covered their mouths, but I saw them. "I like to review the physical copies," I said calmly. "It helps me spot errors that screens miss. I found a decimal error in the procurement log that would have cost us $50,000. "It wastes trees," Julian snapped, dismissing the savings. "And it shows a refusal to adapt. You are holding us back, Arthur. You are the anchor dragging behind the speedboat. We need to cut the line if we want to go fast." He didn't invite me to his office to fire me. He didn't have the decency to do it behind closed doors. He did it right there in the atrium, in front of the people I had hired and trained. Pack your things, Julian said, his voice echoing. We are restructuring the engineering lead role. We need a digital native. You're retired, effective immediately. Security will walk you out. The humiliation was palpable. It hung in the air like smoke. The interns looked away, suddenly finding their shoes very interesting. My team, the guys I had worked with for decades, looked furious but scared. They had mortgages. They had kids in college. They couldn't speak up. I looked at Julian. He was smiling. He thought he had just won. He thought he had slain the dragon. "Are you sure about this, Julian?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. "You might want to check the contracts before you do this. Specifically the founding documents from 1995. "I don't need to check contracts to know when someone is obsolete," Julian sneered. "Go home, Grandpa, feed the birds. We've got it from here. The future doesn't need you." "Okay," I said. I didn't argue, I didn't yell, I didn't beg. I walked to my office. I didn't pack much. I took my fountain pen. I took the picture of my late wife, Margaret, off the desk. I took my grandfather's slide rule. And I took one specific frame off the wall. It wasn't a degree. It wasn't an industry award. It was the original patent deed for the K4 valve. See, when Silas and I started, we had a unique agreement. We were engineers first, businessmen second. I kept the intellectual property rights to the valve design. It is my invention. I licensed it to Aerodyne for precisely $1 a year. It was a token sum. But the contract had a clause. It was a golden handcuffs clause, but for the company, not me. The license to manufacture, sell, or distribute the K4 valve is contingent upon the continued employment of Arthur, last name, as the lead engineer. Upon termination of his employment without cause, this license expires immediately and all rights revert to the patent holder. Julian had never read the contract. He was too busy looking at NFTs and planning synergy retreats. He thought he was firing an employee. He was actually firing the product. I put the frame in my box. I walked out of the office. I walked past the server room. I walked past the manufacturing floor where the automated CNC machines were humming, cutting the metal for the valves, producing the revenue that paid Julian's salary. I walked to the front desk. I handed my badge to the guard, Mike. "Take care, Arthur," Mike said sadly. "Place won't be the same." "You too, Mike. Keep your resume updated. Things might get quiet around here." I walked out to my car. It was 10 a.m. The sun was shining. I drove home, made a sandwich, and sat on my porch. I checked my watch. The licensing server, a piece of software I wrote 10 years ago that validates the production rights with the machine software every hour, was due to ping the HR database at 1 p.m. It checks my employment status. When it saw I was terminated, it would execute the kill switch protocol. It wasn't malware. It wasn't a virus. It was a digital rights management compliance script. It was designed to prevent the company from manufacturing my invention if they ever decided they didn't need me. I took a bite of my sandwich. It was a nice day. At 1 p.m., the silence in my house was broken by the ringing of my phone. It wasn't Julian. It was Sarah, the floor manager. She was a good kid. She started as an intern 5 years ago and I trained her personally. She knew the machines better than anyone except me. "Arthur," she shouted over the background noise. I could hear alarms. I could hear people yelling. "What is happening?" The machines stopped, all of them. The CNCs, the lathes, the quality scanners, they all just shut down at the same time. "What does the screen say, Sarah?" I asked, sipping my iced tea. It says license EXPIRED, contact IP holder, manufacturing HALTED. "Arthur, what does that mean? Did we miss a software payment? Did the vendor cut us off?" "No," I said, "you missed an Arthur payment." "What?" "Julian fired me this morning, Sarah. He terminated my contract. The K4 valve patent belongs to me. The company only has the right to manufacture it while I am employed there. Since I am no longer employed, the license is revoked. The machines are programmed to stop producing counterfeit goods. It's automatic." "Oh my God," Sarah whispered. The realization hit her. "The clause, I remember you mentioning it once at a Christmas party years ago. I thought you were joking." "I never joke about intellectual property, Sarah." "Does Julian know?" "I don't think he reads the paperwork," I said. "He's a big picture guy. He probably thinks the machines just need a firmware update." "He's on the floor right now screaming at the IT guys," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "He thinks it's a cyber attack. He's calling the FBI. He's yelling about Russian hackers." "Tell him to call his lawyer instead," I said. "And Sarah, clock out early. It's going to be a long week. You aren't going to be making any valves today." I hung up. At 1:30 p.m. my phone rang again. It was the general counsel, a man named Robert. Robert had been with the company almost as long as I had. He was a decent lawyer, but he had been pushed to the sidelines by Julian's new legal team of aggressive corporate sharks. "Arthur," Robert said, his voice breathless. He sounded like he had run up 3 flights of stairs. "Please tell me you didn't leave the building." "I was escorted out by security, Robert, per Julian's orders. I am obsolete. I am feeding the birds as instructed." "He didn't consult me," Robert yelled. "I was in a deposition. I came back to the office and the factory is dead. Arthur, you have to turn the machines back on. We have a shipment due to Boeing on Friday. If we miss it, the penalties are millions. They will cancel the contract." "I can't turn them back on, Robert. I'm not an employee. I would be trespassing. An unauthorized use of my IP is a federal crime. If you try to bypass the lock, I will sue you for patent infringement." "We can fix this," Robert pleaded. "I'll draft a consulting agreement. We'll pay you, just come back. I'll get Julian to apologize." "I don't want a consulting agreement," I said. "I want to enjoy my retirement. I realized Julian was right. I am old. I should relax." "Arthur, stop. Julian is an idiot, we know that. But you are killing the company. There are 300 people here who need jobs." "Julian killed the company," I corrected. "I'm just the coroner. He fired the guy who owns the boat while we were in the middle of the ocean." "What do you want?" Robert asked. "Name it." "I want to speak to the board," I said. "Not Julian, the board, the chairman." "They are flying in tonight for an emergency meeting," Robert said. "They just got the alert that production hit zero. Be by your phone." At 3 p.m. Julian finally called. I answered on speaker so I could continue pruning my bonsai tree. It is a delicate art, much like navigating corporate stupidity. "You hacked us," Julian screamed. He sounded hysterical. "I'm sending the police to your house. You planted a virus. You sabotaged the network." "It's not a virus, Julian. It's a contract. Did you ever read the founding documents? Section 4, paragraph B. "I don't care about documents. Turn it back on. I am the CEO. I order you to turn it back on." "You fired me," I said. "You have no authority over me. You are a stranger on the phone. And by the way, every minute those machines are down, you are losing about $5,000 in production capacity. How is that looking for your agility metrics? Are you disrupting the market yet?" "I was joking," he pivoted, his voice trembling. "It was a joke, a prank, to test the team's resilience. Come back. We can laugh about it. We were going to give you a surprise party." "You called me grandpa in front of the whole company," I said. "You told me to feed the birds. I didn't find it funny." "I'll give you a raise, 5%, just give me the code." "My price just went up," I said. "And Julian, you aren't invited to the negotiation." I hung up. I blocked his number. At 6 p.m., a black town car pulled into my driveway. It was the chairman of the board, Mr. Sterling. He looked tired. He looked like a man who had spent the last 4 hours on a private jet reading legal briefs that terrified him. He walked up to my porch. "Arthur," he said, shaking my hand, "may I come in?" We sat in my living room. I offered him tea. He accepted. We drank in silence for a moment. Robert explained the situation, Sterling said, setting down his cup. It seems we have a significant liability issue regarding the IP rights. You do, I agreed. You are currently manufacturing nothing, and your backlog is growing. Boeing called me, by the way. They wanted to know why their order status changed to indefinite hold. I told them to call you. Sterling winced. Julian made a mistake. Julian made a choice, I said. He chose to humiliate the person who owns the foundation of your business. He chose style over substance. He chose youth over experience. And he did it publicly. We want you back, Sterling said. Name your terms, salary, title, whatever. I set my teacup down. I don't want my job back, Sterling. I am 62. I don't want to report to a child who thinks experience is a liability. I don't want to fight for my parking spot. I want a new arrangement. Go on. I want a licensing deal, I said. A standard royalty agreement. The company can continue to manufacture the K4 valve. But instead of the $1 a year fee included in my employment, I want 5% of the gross revenue from every unit sold. Sterling's eyes widened. 5%? Arthur, that's $2 million a year. That's more than the entire executive payroll. It is, I smiled. It's the cost of doing business with a fossil. Fossils are expensive, Sterling. They belong in museums. That cuts our profit margin in half, Sterling argued. The shareholders will revolt. The alternative is 0% profit because you can't make the valve, I said. And Boeing will sue you for breach of contract. And I will take my patent to your competitor, Lockheed. I think they would be very interested in the K4 tech. In fact, I have a lunch scheduled with their VP of engineering tomorrow. I didn't, but Sterling didn't know that. Sterling knew I wasn't bluffing. He knew the tech was vital. He knew they couldn't reverse engineer it fast enough to save the contracts. Fine, Sterling said. 5%. But you have to come in as a consultant to maintain the systems. We can't run the machines without your override code. I will, I said. For a consulting fee of $300 an hour, remote only. I don't come into the office. I don't attend all-hands meetings. I send an invoice. Agreed. One more thing, I said. Yes. Julian. What about him? I want him gone, I said. Today. I won't sign the license while he is CEO. He is a liability. He nearly destroyed the company in 3 hours because he didn't do his due diligence. I want him fired, and I want it to be public. I want an email sent to the entire company stating that he was terminated for gross negligence. Sterling sighed. He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. Security, this is Sterling. Escort Julian out of the building. Remove his access. He is terminated effective immediately. Yes. Now take his badge and tell him if he touches a computer, we sue him. He hung up. He looked at me. It's done. Then we have a deal, I said. I signed the new licensing agreement right there on my coffee table. I gave Sterling the override code for the server. It was SILAS 1995. The factory turned back on at 7 p.m. I got a text from Sarah. We are live. Thank God. I made $2 million last year without lifting a finger. I spent the time traveling with my grandkids and restoring my classic car. I bought a vacation home in Italy. Julian tried to sue for wrongful termination. It didn't go far. It turns out, firing the guy who owns the product you sell is considered gross negligence by any competent judge. He is currently working as a visionary consultant on LinkedIn, which I assume means he is unemployed. He sends me connection requests. I ignore them. The new CEO is Sarah, the former floor manager. I recommended her to the board. She doesn't have an MBA. She doesn't wear limited edition sneakers, but she knows how the machines work. She doesn't care about digital natives. She cares about making valves that keep planes in the sky. Sometimes being old doesn't mean you are obsolete. It means you are the only one who knows where the off switch is. And sometimes you have to turn the lights out to show people who really holds the power. So, dear viewers, was I wrong for holding the company hostage to teach them a lesson? If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.